Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live podcast, Monday, 26th of May, 2025 already. And today, Jakko and I are going to talk about toxic shame. So, this is not the kind of shame that has to do with what you did. Toxic shame has to do with feeling ashamed about who you are. And these are levels of shame that we can't easily let go. Now, we came up with this topic because last episode we were talking about self judgment. And I think you ended that call somewhere saying, yeah, but okay, so what if then at a certain point you lost all these levels of self judgment and then you're standing there and you're like, okay, here I am. And then you don't have a voice, right? It was something like
Mm,
that, I think we came up
yeah,
with.
true. Yeah.
And while I'm saying that, I think, yeah, that's not just the only situation that it happens, right? So, toxic shame, let's first explore what it actually looks like.
Maybe to finish a bit what we said about last time, that as soon as I felt ready to go outside and show myself and be in connection with people, I came to the conclusion that I didn't have a clue what to talk about because I'd never practiced by having a normal, nice, intimate conversation.
Yes,
So I was looking for words, topics. I couldn't understand what I should talk about.
yeah,
So by missing out the normal development as a child and adolescent to just talk about personal stuff, I felt like I don't know even what to talk about.
yeah. Yeah, and it's a beautiful example. It's just one example of toxic shame, right? Because toxic shame can start with this because not knowing what to talk about does not necessarily
Mm.
lead to toxic shame. But the way you were talking about it last time, I thought, oh, this is toxic shame. And what Yako means here is, I don't know what to talk about. That can be fine, right? The way you're saying it now is like, well, you know what? I just didn't know what to talk about. That's okay. But what that can pull up is this sense of, I don't know what to talk about, I better disappear. If I don't know what to talk about, I shouldn't be in this room. And that's a
Could it be the other way around? That's the toxic shame was there, then the self judgment, and then the not
probably,
development or the
yes,
yeah.
yes, yeah. So I'll go later into what how we build these layers, right? Because we all know shame. We all know shame around, oh, I'm ashamed I don't know, that I broke something at somebody's house. I'm ashamed that this happened. Oh, I am late. I feel shame about making you feel upset, right? So this is what I would say normal shame. Now, I'm not saying it's normal to feel that way. I'm just saying um, that there is even a level of shame that we think another person should be feeling, right? Very often, specifically on social media, we hear people say they should be ashamed of themselves. They should feel shame, meaning that this is a level of treating other people that we shouldn't accept and we shouldn't accept from ourselves and shouldn't be accepted. That is what we call shame. Now, toxic shame is not about any logical thing that happened, any logical thing that we can say, "Ooh, that shouldn't have happened. You should have known better," right? Toxic shame starts in early childhood development. It's a big childhood development system where we feel shame about taking up space, where we feel shame about our existence. Let me share a little bit more about how it starts, and then we can go into what it can show up like, right? We just had Yakko's example, but let's look at how it starts. So, if you've been following this podcast for a while, you might have heard me say something about how we start in this life, right? We have an egg and a sperm, they come together, that starts replicating, and there's this whole bunch of cells, they're all identical. And at a certain point, that bunch of cells starts to move, right? It starts to dent a little bit like a bean shape, and then cells start to specialize. Then we start to stretch out, further specialization, stretching out, further specialization. If you want to hear more details around that, um, follow one of my webinars or send me a message because there's a lot more to say here. But that whole movement of the cells sparks DNA in certain cells to become a heart cell, in certain cells to become a brain cell, in certain cells to become a toenail. So this whole movement sparks the specialization of the cells. And that movement is what I call God. Now, there is a lot more to say about God, a lot more to say about the movement, but it's not some man in the sky trying to move us into being, but there is a God force that is moving those cells that is a complete mystery. That God force is moving those cells, shaping it into you ultimately. Now, after we're born, we are still being driven by this internal force to move, to explore, to touch, to um, experience. And we know this, right? If we see a baby, it's being moved through life. At a certain point, we fall asleep, we move. And to this very day, I'm 50 years, Yako's 55, we're still being moved to a certain degree. As much as our mind thinks we are doing the moving and we are consciously aware of all the things we're choosing, we could never be because, I don't know, Jacko thought he was going to a certain park with my son yesterday, and then it started raining. So then they decided something else. Now, as much as they might think that was a conscious decision, we are constantly being moved by things around us, moved to tears, but also moved to certain ideas. Quite literally, I was walking in the woods yesterday with Yakko, and my ankle gave up. So now I have a broken ankle, and I was moved into a whole new chapter of my life, the chapter of my life where I have to surrender into the fact that I have a broken ankle. So we don't decide all of that. Life is moving us, and we are moving through life, and we are being moved by mysterious forces that we don't know how these work. Now, when we're being born, we're not finished. So then all this nervous system, our brain centers, they're not being developed yet. They're constantly developing and shaping and being shaped through interaction with the world around us. So there's a constant shaping of us in response to our environment. Ideally, that environment consists partly of adults, grown-ups, who are able to use their nervous system in a correct way so that then our nervous system will start to pick up what to do. Very simple. We haven't learned how to move through anger and fear and shame and happiness and love. So while we are feeling that in our exploration of the world, the grown-ups around us are regenerating their nervous system. And by witnessing what they are doing, our nervous system is picking up how it needs to do that. Now, that's how an ideal childhood goes. None of us have had that ideal childhood. To a certain degree, we might have, otherwise, we'd be in a psychiatric ward. But to a certain degree, we don't know. So then we move, we explore, we look at life, we move our way through life, we hit into situations um, that are really awkward and complicated. and we hit situations where other people cannot deal with us, either because what we're doing is triggering anger or places that they're not comfortable of going to, or because we're lonely, or because nobody is there, or because if we did a certain thing or made a certain joke, um, people responded angrily to us. Now, in those moments, we will start to mistrust that movement that is driving us. And we will start to look at the people around us feeling, oh my God, wait a minute. I was just moving and exploring and figuring out life. And apparently, what I was just doing was too much for the people around me. Now, could be a million things, right? I can remember that my mom used to get very angry when we had emotions. Now, that has everything to do with her childhood, and it's not her fault, but she couldn't deal with our emotions, leading to when I had emotions, I had to stop feeling. Ultimately, responses like that, and we will talk about more responses because we want to have a dialogue around this, right? I just needed to explain this. Ultimately, in responses like that from the people around us, as much as they can't help it, we as children start to develop a sense of shame for even having it. So, very simple um, example, I was 1.5. I didn't know how to stop crying. Of course not. A 1.5-year-old shouldn't be. And then what happens is that my mom didn't know how to deal with it. So she would shake me and really make me stop. That leads in a 1.5-year-old to deep layers of toxic shame for even expressing and feeling these emotions. Now, why it's called toxic shame is because it is a system that starts to poison you every time you feel it. So every time you are reminded of a situation where you were making the other person feel that level of discomfort, you will feel, I made her feel that way. Now, a child is highly dependent on its caregivers, highly dependent on the people around it. So the child will make itself wrong. It will say, this is not the situation that was wrong. I am wrong for causing it. Now, the situation I just talked about was not something that should have happened, but it can be easier, right? If we put our kid in a timeout because I don't know, he's throwing food through the kitchen. That used to happen when our kids were young. If you then put them in a timeout, what happens is that the child will not understand that it shouldn't throw food. It might stop doing that, but the kid understands if I express myself, the consequence is neglect. The consequence is cutting off of attachment. Now, if the punishment for a child is being cut off from attachment, the child will start to stop throwing food around. Of course, they will because they learn, but they don't learn that you don't want that. They learn to avoid being cut off from attachment. So they just learned conditional love. That's not what you wanted to teach them. You wanted to teach them that there's boundaries, of course. But the boundary that should have been there is you saying stop, letting the child stop, being clear about the behavior, but the consequence should never be cutting off of attachment. Now, this is theory, right? Because it's hard as fuck to do, right? All of us, I've given my kids a timeout or I
I
didn't
almost
know.
forgot how difficult it was because our children are 19 and almost 18 now. But
Yeah,
last week there was a 1 year and a half old in the house for just a few hours, and I saw,
yes.
oh yeah, I see how difficult this could be as a parent.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm not trying to tell parents by sharing how toxic shame starts that you're doing anything wrong. It's just good to know that toxic shame, if it starts that early in development, can never be looked at from a place of, oh, yeah, but there's a belief system that I can let go of. Because it's not that. What it starts with is you feeling shame about even existing, feeling shame about breathing. Now, that can lead to what Yako just said, right? When I speak up, I feel these layers of shame, of anxiety, can lead to immense levels of stage fright. But this morning, I was talking to a client, and she says, if I show myself to the people I love, right? So these are people she loves deeply. She knows very well. They love her back. There is no problematic relationship whatsoever. But she says, if I take up space, I feel like I'm too much. If I share my needs, if I share what I want, if I share my thoughts, I have such huge levels of anxiety that I just shut down and there's a complete shutdown. Now, she's aware of it. Her first response was, I couldn't do it. She said, so for me as well, I would just move, right? The minute I would make somebody feel uncomfortable, I would leave or move. And this lady I was talking to said, I just feel that I created the discomfort in the other person. That is what toxic shame does. It will make you morph into something and it feels like, I don't know how to stop doing this because the shame is so huge. What's coming up for you, Yako?
Yeah, a lot of recognition because I know for a long time, whenever I spoke up in a group of people, the first reaction I got in myself was, "Oh, how can I, as soon as possible, bring the attention back to the others? Because
Yeah,
else I will be too much, or else I'm not the person that can take up this space,
yeah.
uh, or so I put myself always in the most modest position in the group. So the quiet, most quiet, most uh, yeah. I held myself back for a very long time. Yeah,
And it's interesting because what you're sharing now reminds me of the student I spoke to last week who said, I want the other people that ask me to speak up. They're never giving me any space. And you have shared that with me a long time ago by now, but in the beginning, you would say, you need to give me some space too. And why do people not give me any space to speak up? And that was actually the same thing this morning with the lady I spoke to. Why do people not want to hear what I have to say? And that's the wrong question because the fact that you're at the table gives you the space. It is not the other person who needs to make space for you. It is you who needs to take the space that's there. The fact that you have a chair at the table means people want to hear you. Now, that's easy, right? Sounds very easy. I'm sitting here, so of course I get to say something. But there is a self destructive force inside of you that feels like, yeah, but if they don't ask me, I can't say anything, right?
no
What is
permission.
permission?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's about permission. So I know a lot of people who are looking for permission, but it's a strange thing to need permission first because why should someone give me permission? Why am I dependent on someone else to feel permission to do my things or speak up? It's if I think about it, it's really a strange concept that I would need permission to be here.
Well, actually, what you're
But it's
what
really how I felt.
it's really how it felt, right? Yeah, and it's so
It's really
interesting
how it
because
felt.
The only permission you're ever going to need is the fact that you're breathing in the same room. That is the permission.
Yeah. And why should somebody else?
Yeah.
Because we're all equal, and
Yes.
so how comes that I need permission and the other one doesn't?
That's weird.
That's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, when it's there, it's there. So the it's so much stronger than the cognitive idea about it, the concept.
It's not just a concept. It's not
No,
just an idea. It's not a thought that we can let go of.
it's
Because
really,
this is where it gets interesting because the minute you try, the minute you want to give yourself permission, the levels of toxic shame build up, start releasing. So that means that in order to speak up in that moment, you will have to face layers of actually toxic chemicals in your system that will be released. That means that in order to take up that space, you will need to poison yourself a little bit. And it feels like that. It feels like if I have to take up this space, I will die. And because you're actually poisoning yourself, you feel like you really can't deal with it. And that is true because if all that toxic shame would be released at the same time, you would not be able to deal with it. So we can't just say, oh, just let it go. Oh, come on, that's just a belief and push somebody through this. Well, we can, of course, we can. If we go to some coaches' workshops, right? They'll stand there saying, yeah, 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 or whatever kind of bullshit. And then what happens is you will force yourself through it, but that experience will not be helpful when it comes to toxic shame because it will just help you create a new kind of mask. It will help you create um, a mask of I need to push myself. I need to not show my real inner self. I cannot be with these feelings and these emotions. So I
you
need
start proving yourself maybe.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly,
Or it gets worse because if you get the permission from others and you have to force yourself to speak up, go through the shame. If you really have to force it, you cannot bring something which is really nice or really good or what you really want to express yourself about. So it's proof that such a situation can be proof that you're wrong. So that it's good that you shut up.
exactly. Yeah, and it's interesting while you're saying that, I'm realizing it's not about um, proof of your voice anymore. It's about, how am I going to say that? It's about you just being, you just allowing. And if you didn't have a safe space when you were young where just allowing yourself without paying attention to other people was normal, then you're constantly fighting the other people, making them wrong over you. So there is no um, equal connection there. It's always you making the other person more important, giving them power over whether you show up, or you giving yourself power, trying to prove. But the whole system of feeling completely at ease in life, feeling a deep inner sense of peace for being here will still be lacking. If we push ourselves through it, we will still feel this unease about life. It's like we need to conquer life, like we need to fight it all the time.
Yeah.
Reminds me of the moment, and I'm pretty sure we talked about it already on this podcast. I forgot what episode, where I dropped you off in front of your house to pick up something, and I was standing as close as possible to the front door because there was a downpour of rain. and I wanted you to just not get wet and go in and out as quick as possible. And there was a car standing behind me, waiting patiently, no problem. But you got so mad at me for taking up space. And that's the same thing because now I was taking up space on your behalf. And
You didn't. Yeah, I know. At, at hindsight, I can see this, but right then in the moment, I
yeah,
thought you're not listening to what I want.
yes.
I ask you to. So yeah,
Which is correct. I was not listening to your needs at all. Correct. I was trying to be nice. I was trying to love you. I was trying to give you an experience of life can be easy. I'll just be right here. And I was completely operating on your behalf. And then there was a shame rage explosion. And this was not a please listen to me. I want you to park over there. This was a hurricane of rage. And that is shame rage. Now, these levels of shame rage are not something that we commonly see in a lot of people, but we can feel it. We can feel this hurricane building up in us.
yeah, but you say you usually not see in people that much, but there's I can think about the differences between like we it was in our relationship, it was a private situation with no other people involved. So
Yeah,
I can imagine that a lot of those shame rage is there, but only in between people who know each other very well, because
yes,
they can hurt each other the most.
possibly,
So
possibly.
I there's a lot of how do you say this, home violence or uh,
Yeah, domestic violence.
domestic
Yes.
violence. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of that can be related to shame issues,
Could
toxic
be.
shame issues.
Could be. And now that we're talking about this, I do agree big time that the whole idea of you are making me feel that way and you should stop making me feel that way has a lot to do with toxic shame. It has a lot to do with I don't know how to deal with these emotions. I don't know how to leave you. So I'm just going to blame you for making me feel this way. Because ultimately, and I've been in those relationships where I thought this person is doing this to me. Yeah, but I wasn't tied to the kitchen chair. I could get up and leave and say, hey guys, this is not what I want in my life. But I didn't allow myself the space to just make a different choice. I wanted them to hear me. Now, I would leave, but I would not, I would leave. This is interesting. So for me, toxic shame showed up as when I took up space, I would feel such deep shame for taking up my truthful space that I would leave. So I've heard my entire childhood I was too much, I was too loud, I was too enthusiastic, I was too funny, I was too everything, right? So whenever I was noticed, I felt this huge level of shame about even being there. So every time somebody gave me a compliment or shared love with me or said how much they like me, I would feel deep levels of toxic shame because if somebody likes me, I am evoking something in them. I can't do that. This needs to stop. And I would literally pack up my things and move cities. And that is toxic shame driven because can we just be present while the other person is feeling something else than we are? Now, that's a whole next level. We see this whole culture right now, right? If somebody is feeling that way, that's their fault. And I'm just going to create a boundary and I don't want to be next to that. And that's bullshit. And if they just stop feeling this, And there's a lot of blame and justification in our society right now, normalizing toxic shame and even enlarging it, making it feel like, um, yeah, like the other person has all that power. Reminds me of a post that I was reading where somebody said, and they meant it beautifully, they said, my neighbor is smoking pot, and that smell of the pot is in my garden, it's in my house, it's in my daughter's bedroom. And they were upset about that, which I can fully relate to. And they said, they're not normal. They need to stop that behavior. This is not legal. They shouldn't be doing that. They're making me feel this way. And the whole post was one rant about it. And they're not respectful. They're disrespecting my privacy. And they even put a photo of that person sitting in the garden smoking pot. It was really like they were trying to shame that person. Now, the interesting thing is my immediate response to a post like that is, okay, I get it. You don't like that. I can fully relate to that. But maybe that pot smoking neighbor is completely upset by your being quiet, not in anybody's way holier than thou. Oh, look at me. I'm just a little person here. It could both be triggered, but both are not having space for each other. There is this, I get to shame you because you are in my way. Now, I could have easily said it the other way around, right? Because the pot smoking person could also have posted, like, my neighbor is such a quiet, holier than thou person, and I don't even get to sit in my garden and do whatever I want, making no noise at all. It's just a smell, and the whole of Amsterdam smells like this. So, what are they worried about, right? But there's this whole idea that it is normal to rant about something that you don't like, blaming the other person for your feelings. So we're living in a society where tolerating each other comes down to I will tolerate you if you're not in my way. And that's an interesting concept because pure tolerance is always going to be around me being able to deal with my emotions so you don't have to deal with my emotions because I can deal with them. Living together, working together, being in a marriage together, being in a school together, being in the marketplace together means other people are going to trigger you. Go ahead. You want to say something?
Yeah, I want to take a few steps back because I was very interested when you said um, when I had in my earlier years, I felt toxic shame, and then if people came to me and made a compliment or came from love
Yes.
or were lovely to me, it was not possible to resist or how to stay.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I was wondering what's happening in such a moment. So could it be that um, you don't trust those people because you're really the belief is that strong that you know that they can be right because you're making yourself wrong while having toxic shame, or is it even that it um, torp torp I say this torpedo
Torpedes?
torpedoes your self-defense mechanism, your coping with life, because that it's even very dangerous when people do this because then your truth or your isn't there anymore. What if people love me? Then everything isn't as I thought it was. Or
Well, it's even a little bit different. It's even if somebody loves me, then I need to give them the control. So if somebody loves me, then now I Um, Now I don't own my own space anymore. So it's a few things. It's a few things. One is the message is you're a horrible person. My entire childhood, the message was you're a horrible person. You're the problem. You're causing me to feel this way. If you would not be there, everything would be a relief. By the way, these are not necessarily things my parents always said. It is 100% certain not what they felt about me. It is what I experienced. Now, probably more to do with how they perceived themselves than how they perceived me. I know now. They're 80, they love me to pieces. But they had a deeply traumatic childhood, both of them. So, this is not conscious programming by my parents trying to make me feel horrible. They were trying to make me feel loved. They didn't have a clue how to deal with that. And they didn't feel loved, and they had a lot of problems. So I felt like this is actually what the real disturbance was. I knew there was love. I could feel love. And there was deep repercussions every time I showed myself. So there was love and spanking and bullying and yelling and fighting all the time. And both of it was there. So it was kind of like love is very untrustworthy thing because if I allow it, I need to allow all of the rest too. And that was too unpredictable, too complicated. Let's run away from it. So then there's, and I'm just thinking about it because I don't have all the answers about this. Um, but when somebody loves me, all of this is triggered. And not as much anymore. But when I would say 20 years ago, when somebody loved me, I didn't know how to deal with that. Partly because my whole system was running on you're a horrible person. So then when somebody said, you're a beautiful person, I love you, partly it wouldn't land. I just wouldn't receive that message. And partly I shut down with messages like that. I didn't know how to deal with that. And also, if somebody would show emotions around me that I didn't know how to deal with, I'd have to deal with those. And I didn't know how to do that. So, well, in the very beginning of our relationship, right? You love me and then you get angry. Okay, now what? So Yakko says he loves me. Yakko gets angry. Probably my fault. That was my whole programming. So very simple, right? Toxic shame is very
So it
simple.
was really familiar to you.
It was very familiar to me. Yes.
Right. It.
That was very familiar. Why do you think I wanted to drive off? So today, when you get angry, you don't get that angry anymore, but if somebody gets that angry, I don't make it personal. I don't feel I did anything wrong. I just sit there and I am the complete calm. And if I'm triggered, I deal with my triggers and I just sit there feeling, wow, you're angry. There's a lot of anger here. And it's not about me because I know I didn't cause it because I was just sitting there being nice. But 20 years ago, the first time this happened, it felt like a storm that you were trying to destroy me. And because you love me, it felt like there was no escape. It felt like now I had to surrender myself to your anger. And that was the way it was when I was little. If somebody was angry, that was what I was going to deal with for a few days. So it felt like I had to regulate other people's emotions. I had to make sure other people didn't feel anything. And then if somebody said they loved me and then they got angry or whatever, I didn't, I, there was a shutdown.
Yeah,
let's leave, let's move.
and
And that
that's
is,
not only a thought; it's physical even.
it's physical. And
It's your nervous system
exactly.
doing this for you.
And then for years, actually, what would also happen is dissociation because I needed to leave in that moment because it was too much. Now, there's two ways of leaving: physically leaving the room or leaving your body. Now, that can feel like calm. It can feel like I'm here. I don't need anything to happen. You can be as angry as you want. Yeah, but there was no connection. So it was totally fine if somebody got completely angry with me. Yeah, because I wasn't there. Toxic shame needs us to express what is happening inside of us in that moment, which to me felt like um, impossible. All I could do in those moments is make it about you in that moment. So look at your anger, look at what's happening inside of you, and um, being present in my own body just felt like an entire um, well, the image that comes to me is that what it felt like in my body was as if there was a cabinet filled with antique glass that had just been smashed with a baseball bat. So it felt like my entire body existed of shattered glass. Mm, what does it feel like for you?
Feel what?
Toxic shame. So I know sometimes you felt ashamed about me taking up space. What happened physically inside of your body in those moments?
Yeah. Mm, that's I'm not getting to a certain memory right now.
Okay.
So
Yeah, use another memory then. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know exactly. The strange thing, I know certain uh, events where I really felt that I was really shy in a very unhealthy way, really shy away, and but that was before I was 20 or 30.
Yeah.
So um, that I not even could react to certain people or what people were saying. But what I want to say about this is in between those events. So there are very clear events that I couldn't take up space and I didn't uh, I I was not very there in situations. So in groups of people, even people I knew very well. And there were also moments that I could be very um, uh, aanwezig,
Present?
present. So there was also, if there was a moment that I could feel that there was space, that I then I could take up a lot of space and be ashamed afterwards,
Yeah.
or felt okay, this is, or maybe even went really too much and said things that were painful, hurtful for other people even. So that's a strange
Yes.
thing because, but maybe it was just a reaction on being so quiet and not there and not felt welcome for a long time. And then if there was some space, it could be the other way around.
Yes.
and
Yeah, and what
especially when there was some alcohol there involved, then even more, of course.
yes.
So, but that could be very shameful the next day of the, or even the same when people really said this is not fun, this is really awful. So,
Yes.
so the compensation of being that quiet and not present all the time could be,
Well, it's a similar pattern to what I was describing. It shows up differently, but the hurting the other person or hurting other people is also kind of like um, reestablishing the fact that you shouldn't take up space,
yeah,
reestablishing the fact that your presence is not the right thing to do.
yeah, true,
Like, I will take up space, but somebody's going to feel pain somewhere.
yeah,
and and I'm not comfortable with my pain, so it'll just hurt you.
yeah,
And then there's a toxic shame relapse after that where you don't feel where you feel guilty about what you did.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
even more difficult to show up the next time in the same group of people.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. And the interesting thing is I there is another way that we can cover up. So these are all things, right? Not take up space, moving, not sharing our voice, being very silent. But there's another way that toxic shame can come up, and that is constantly being busy, constantly being um, of service. And that feels very innocent. It feels like I'm doing everything for everybody. And I know you used to do that. Now you're just busy because things need to be done. But you used to constantly be busy, kind of like, don't blame me, don't blame me, don't blame me. I'm doing the best I can. So don't touch me. And that constant busyness can be a strategy of kind of frantically trying to be seen and frantically trying to cover up and frantically trying to not create any space to feel this shame. I'm not sure if it's about you anymore, but can you relate to it?
mm, yeah, I guess so. I guess so. Yeah, 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 and yeah,
I used to work with somebody who was extremely like that. We called her Mrs. Busy. And she was always doing things, always, never resting for a second. Because the minute she would be resting, toxic shame would come up. So there was this huge sense of, I'm fine as long as I'm doing. For me, it was, I'm fine as long as I'm alone. Get the fuck out of my aura. As long as I'm alone, I'm fine. Don't let me connect. With her, it was, don't stop me from doing things. For
so
you,
doing so, so there's no being.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes. So the minute we take that survival behavior away, we're going to need to deal with toxic shame. And that means that we're going to need, and there's probably more of these, right? Because for Yucko, it was like, don't let me speak up, don't let me feel my full size. The lady I spoke with this morning is, yeah, don't make me feel something else than the other people are feeling. Because if I need to come out with the way I am, oh my God, then I have to admit that I am okay the way I and that I am worthy of love the way I am. So we can get to these patterns and think, oh, yeah, I see it now. Now I can stop doing it. But it's not that easy because the toxic shame will start to come up and we will need to deal with that. And that means that we need to poison ourselves a little bit and hold space for our system while it is going through downpours of poisonous stuff wading through our body. And what we tend to think is, I need to fix that and then I can show up. I need to get rid of the shame and then I can show up. I need to heal this then I can show up. I need to understand that I'm worthy, and then I can show up. The problem is that this shame needs to be released, but it will release. That's easy. Just stop doing the survival thing and it will release. What we need to do in order to deal with this is build a foundation of health in our system. We can't work on shame if there is not a huge foundation of places where you actually feel beautiful, where you feel all right, where you feel trusted, where you feel that who you are is not just acceptable, but fully embraced and loved, even. That means that in order to deal with toxic shame, we can't fix the shame, we can't fix the pattern. We need to build an entirely new pattern where you are held while all of this is happening inside of your body. I was talking to this lady this morning and she said, yeah, I need to be able to do that on my own. But we can't do that on our own because it started in connection with our caregivers when we were very young. That is where we weren't met while we were dealing with big emotions. So then now we still need to be met while we're dealing with this emotion of love, of beauty, of fear, of shame. And that means that we need to learn to focus on how that foundation is being built in the moment where shame is being released. And it needs to be both.
Yeah, there's one thing that I've come up with now, and that's um, I play the trombone. I like to play jazz music, and I like to go to jam sessions, and I did this for a long time already. But especially nowadays, I know, okay, if there's a song and we have those improvisations, so I know I can come in every any moment to do my thing and take my space, because if I don't, the song is over and then I didn't play. So,
Yes.
but it took a lot of time to feel the permission or the space to. So I was also, then I was waiting for my when I was my turn, my and
Yes.
then uh, just by doing this a lot and playing a musical instrument, it might be more easy than speaking up, because there's some things in between. It's less personal, and but it was a good practice, I think, to take
Yes.
up space, to learn to take up space while
Exactly.
being with other people,
Yeah.
and while there's an audience as well. And so I think
Yeah,
I learned a lot.
we can't do that without God. We can't do that without a bigger presence that gives us that permission. We can't do that without the idea that, okay, maybe it's just me standing here, but this is flowing through me, and you won't get to hear any of this music if I leave my body now. So, or leave the room now. So, we need to get to a place where we can enjoy God fueling through us, and and that means that we need to build a huge foundation, um, where we can feel permission to be alive simply for the fact that we are. This is the note we're going to end on today. This is the permission, the fact that you are. We need to heal these foundations in our nervous system. Let's talk about how to do that next week. All right? Let's talk about what it really requires. And we can't heal it on the podcast, but we can talk about what that looks like, what that feels like, and how that works. Guys, it's been an immense pleasure today to have this conversation. Next week, we're going to talk about not about any theory, just about what healing looks like. when we talk about building a foundation and staying away from trauma. All right. See you next week. And as always, don't forget to share this podcast, tag people, rate it, and Spotify would be extremely pleased if you would give us a rating and make sure that we have all your questions.
Bye.